Ottawa announced this afternoon that Canada will resume funding to UNWRA, the United Nations aid agency for Palestinian refugees in the Gaza Strip. Canada was one of 16 countries that suspended funding after Israel alleged in January that a dozen of its workers participated in the October 7th Hamas attack. Earlier today, before the announcement, our news director David Clement sat down with columnist Rahim Mohamed to discuss the pre-existing debate of whether Canada should resume funding to UNWRA. Here is that interview.
Can you walk us through where we stand right now as of today in terms of UNRWA funding? And I ask that because we know that there was an official who spoke to the CBC stating that Canada would restore funding. There were conversations about whether or not a press conference was going to happen. But now it seems as if the Prime Minister is either walking that back or maybe taking some time to give it some additional thought.
Sure. So the narrative has changed a few times over the course of the week. I'll give you some of the main bullet points. There was the story leaked to CBC on Tuesday that Canada was prepared to make its payment of $25 million per April, as was scheduled before funding in January. We know that there was some sort of announcement in Mississauga, Ontario, scheduled Wednesday morning. That announcement was to include both Development Minister and Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Rae. So a quite high-level announcement scheduled for Wednesday morning, canceled just hours beforehand due to quote-unquote logistics. Later in the day, on Wednesday, it emerges from Israel that we have new evidence implicating two additional UNRWA staffers in October the 11th in the attacks on southern Israel. You have Canada you have sort of the Liberal government over the course of Wednesday backtracking somewhat, saying that they're still deliberating what's going to happen with that payment in April. That same day, you had two Liberal members of Parliament, Anthony Housefather of Mount Royal, Marco Mendocino, I believe, of Toronto Elgin, both coming out against restoring funding to UNRWA. And yesterday, you have the announcement from the Prime Minister that we have people on the ground in the Middle East right now making that determination. As far as I've seen, that's where things stand right now.
Okay. And so the big question here is, should we restore funding to UNRWA?
So if you look at what the United States is doing, the United States under President Joe Biden has said, we're going to look at alternative vehicles for aid to Gaza, kind of ideally that will circumvent UNRWA. They've talked about actually establishing their own presence via Cyprus. So I would kind of lead towards looking at the United States led plan for some sort of alternate vehicle that circumvents and bypasses UNRWA. UNRWA, I can't quite go into it here, but it has quite the checkered past, leading well before October the 7th. Even under Stephen Harper, Canada decided to terminate or even, diminish its relationship with UNRWA. So UNRWA's had a number of scandals relating to quite open anti-Israel sentiments and also just run-of-the-mill corruption within the organization. So if there's a way that we can deliver aid to Gaza that cuts out UNRWA, I think that would be a preferable path to continuing on a financial relationship with an entity, an agency that I think from all accounts has a number of challenges internally and has a number of internal weaknesses and flaws.
And what about the possibility of airdropping aid into Gaza? Because I know it's been reported that that Ottawa has considered it or at least kicked the tires on the idea. Is that also a possible avenue in addition to the developments out of Cyprus and a sea corridor?
So I think we're seeing airdrops from Israel. Again, with Canada, the question's always capacity. The question is, is our air fleet geared to that? Would the introduction of Canadian aircraft to Gaza only complicate matters, only make ongoing operations more challenging because of a lack of technological sophistication or a lack of technological chemistry or compatibility with airdrops that are ongoing, I'm probably not the right guy to talk about Canadian military capacity to carry those out. But I am for, as you mentioned, the Sea Corridor or any sort of arrangement that would cut out UNRWA and maintain the flow of aid to Gaza.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.